Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to Retro Flashforward, showcasing gaming's roots in the current generation. Yeah, it's been a little while since we've done one of these, isn't it? So I've only done one of these before, actually, which was for DuckTales Remastered. And, well, as it turns out, I've had some opportunities presented to do some other entries in this series, if you will. So, Retro Flashforward is very simple. It's a retro flashback episode where we are taking a look at new games that are either remakes of historical titles that came before or are very, very heavily inspired by the games of our past. And, well, look at this thing. Look at this thing, man. So this is crazy. This game just completely popped out of the blue on Steam one day, just a few days ago, actually. It's called, I'm calling it Muri. It might be Muri, I don't know. I'm calling it Muri. And it is supposed to be heavily inspired by old DOS platformers, right down to the EGA graphics and PC speaker sound effects, and the fact that it references DOS. This is not a DOS game. I am running on Windows 7 through Steam, but this game embraces every other DOS sensibility. Did I mention the download is 3 megs? 3! You can't get a friggin' crappy app for your phone that's 3 megs. This is unbelievable. Alright, so we're going to get into this pretty quick. I just want to show you a couple of basic things. So this is the options. There ain't many of them. Full screen or windowed. Sound on or off. And this is interesting. Now I'm going to show both of these. This is the frame rate. So older games of this type, and we're talking games like Commander Keen, especially the original Duke Nukem, not Duke Nukem 3D, Duke Nukem, the original platformer one. Jill of the Jungle, games like that. A lot of them tended to run at a frame rate similar to this, about 16 frames a second. As you can see, that's authentic movement. If you want to smooth it out, you can go to 32. Some people think it looks a little weird. I don't mind it too much, but it is most certainly less authentic. So we're going to go authentic first. And you can set up a joystick if you want. This plays fine with the keys, but I have this set up with an Xbox 360 pad just so you don't have to hear my clicky mechanical keyboard in the background. Though some people like that. And that's the basics of it. Now, you may be wondering a couple of things I was talking about there. EGA graphics and PC speaker. But let me tell you something, you whippersnappers. Back in the early days of DOS gaming, EGA meant 16 colors. That's all our games had. 16 colors, and consarn it, we friggin' liked it. It was mind-blowing, considering that you had to have a very expensive computer to play games in 16 colors, to play in better than black and white in many cases. And the PC speaker, well, it was just that. If you couldn't afford a sound card, you got beeps and boops like that, and that was your sound. It came out of the speaker that was built into your computer. Seriously, that's what this game's embracing. So, as you can see, there's multiple episodes here that you can play through. There is no saving in this game, so you got to play through a whole episode in one shot if you want to do that. It's a little hardcore, and there's multiple difficulty levels, which, as you can see, increase your score multiplier. So we're just going to go normal here. As you can see, there's a little bit of a story here. It's kind of throwaway, but that's kind of the point of these. They're cheesy. These games are not big narrative vehicles. I still think it's kind of weird that your crazy mech suit kind of looks like a bunny, but why not? Now, I am going to say one thing about this game, though. EGA graphics, okay, for you friggin' old people, and by old I mean mid-30s like me, who are watching this, you may notice something here. This game has a lot of green and a lot of magenta, which is a little less CGA and more the even more primitive CGA palette. Again, for you youngins out there, CGA graphics were actually the lower-end predecessor to EGA. EGA was 16 colors. CGA, well, depending on who you ask, CGA were variants of either 4 or 8 colors. Even more lo-fi. And CGA games did tend to use a lot of green and a lot of magenta. And that's what this does. So it's a little bit strange that that's the color palette they chose. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but it does look a little less EGA if you're an anal authentic type like me. So you're seeing the core concept here. This is a platformer. It's a platformer through and through. It's an action combat platformer. But as you can see, It's pretty primitive looking. Your goal is to basically get through all the levels. You can either attempt to speed your way through the levels, or you can take your time and pick up all these little power-ups like floppy disks and other things like that, which I don't know why they're floppy disks. In Duke Nukem, they were things like that too. They're just... The artist basically just took items that they could make easy sprites out of and went, hey, let's do this. And you can either pick... your goal is to get through the level as quickly as possible, but if you want to take your time, you can go through and pick up these different items which just give you more score. And these are score attack games. They're definitely arcade-inspired score attack platformers. And as you can see, that's what you get from it. And you have a couple of incentives, which is, so see, I got 86% of all the stuff. So I did that, and you can see I also get a time bonus. So you're kind of incentivized to clear the level of all the stuff, but also to do it as fast as you can. And that's kind of your objective. So, okay. So we've made it to Earth. I should mention as well that I have actually only played maybe about 10 minutes of this game before starting. I kind of wanted to go into it cold to give you guys a little bit of that experience as well. But this is really interesting, this game, because, like I said, it kind of appeared out of nowhere. I don't remember hearing about this game on Steam Greenlight or anything like that. It just sort of appeared on Steam, and it's cheap. I think it's $3, which is a good price for something like this. And I just had to check it out because there are a lot of games, indie games these days, particularly of the platformer variety, that are trying to embrace nostalgia. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the way most of them do it is by doing an overused pixel art style, which, again, nothing wrong with that, but the problem with pixel art style is that most of them don't really embrace nostalgia because they're a pixelated art style done with modern color palette and art techniques that were simply not feasible on the older systems. And they often will have, much more sophisticated scores and soundtracks, I should say, and gameplay mechanics and control methods and things like that. This game aimed for something extremely specific. They wanted to be as much one of these hardcore, super early DOS platformers as they could. And the only more modern thing they went for was that, hey, this will run on Windows 7 and Windows 8. And that's exactly what this is. If you were to drop this game in front of someone who had no idea what they were playing it on, if you just sat them in front of a screen and said, here, play this, if you did that to me, I would say, hey, what's this neat DOS game? I never played this back in the day. And I would have assumed that you had put me down in front of an old 386 and that I was playing a game from that era. That's how authentic this is. Like, you stack this up against the original Duke Nukem, and it looks very similar. Different color palette, obviously different characters, different enemies and sprites and whatnot, but it plays the same. The movement is the same. The mechanics are the same. Like, this is just a gushing, sloppy French kiss of a love letter to old, not just nostalgia, but old school DOS nostalgia, which is just something you never ever see. Like, they didn't even put chip tunes or, if you want to call it, proper music in this game. It's beeps and boops from a PC speaker. It's a game that is not only based in the DOS era, but based in the lower rent DOS era that, frankly, the majority of us experienced, because let me tell you what, the equivalent of a gaming computer back in 1991 was thousands of dollars in some cases. A basic computer that could run stuff like this competently would maybe be $1,000, $1,500. You wanted a machine with a nice video card and an independent sound card and a big hard drive and all that other stuff, you were looking literally at thousands of dollars. And we're talking 20, 30 years ago money here. Thousands of dollars meant a lot more in 1991 than it does today. So this game knew exactly what it was going for, and you gotta respect that. I mean, these guys were targeting a hyper niche. I mean, even people who are really into indie games these days, a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to look at this game and go, "What the hell is this butt ugly thing? Why would I ever want to play this? It's so primitive compared to a lot of what's out there now." And they're not wrong. They're not wrong at all. I have no doubt that this game was probably made for an uber tiny amount of money, and that the developers knew exactly what they were making, and that they don't need to sell a lot of copies of this to make their money back. But I think it's a really fascinating piece for that reason. And it what the... Holy crap, that was weird. Like I said, I've never gotten this far, so that's quite a thing there. And I really respect that. Now, that said, this is still a game that has come out in a modern era. And while old-timey, grumpy old men gamers like me can appreciate it to a certain point, frankly, you are trying to sell this to a crowd, even if it's older... Even if it's older gamers like myself, you are trying to sell this to a crowd in a modern era. And hey, I love retro games, but I also have a PC that can play all the latest top-shelf AAA stuff. So how does it hold up taking that element of modern context into it? Well, I mean, arguably not very well. I'm going to hazard a guess that this game is not super long. I'm sure on the higher difficulty, I mean, it's already getting kind of challenging, so I'm sure on the higher difficulties and in the later levels, it can get very, can I actually kill this dude? I don't know if I can. I'm sure this game can get, ooh, nice, gives me an extra life. I'm sure this game can get, quite sadistic in its later levels, so there probably is a lot of play value in that. I don't know what that cells thing was. That's interesting. Maybe the help will tell me. See, as you can see, this actually has a help section that will give you interesting things here. Okay, that's what a cell looks like. Oh, it looks like there's special doors that open if you have a cell. That's kind of cool. I like that. That's kind of neat. And that's the thing. This game is clearly built to tickle your nostalgia nerves, and you have to have an appreciation for that, and you have to be willing to accept that. This game, frankly, I mean, this game is primitive. Don't misunderstand me in the slightest. This game is primitive in the context of modern game design. It doesn't necessarily hold up well. It's clunky. The controls are not tight. The movement is clunky, the movement is jerky. The level design, as you can see, is really built on primitives. Very simple primitive design. And you're probably going to play through this fairly quickly and be like, well, okay. And that may not be enough for a lot of people. But the thing is, this is why I think the team who made this are very, very smart people, is... This game is like $3. It's the price of... Oh dear. It's the... Oh, boss battle. This is kind of like that level at the end of Mega Man 2. It's, frankly, this game is in the same price as a lot of crappy mobile games. You know, $3 on a mobile device will not, in many cases, buy you much of any quality. I mean, I think most mobile games are junk to begin with, but... You know, most of the cheap ones are either not very good or loaded with free-to-play garbage. These guys knew exactly what they were making, and I think it shows how smart they are. They were making a very specific thing, and yeah, it may not take you very long to get through this game, but most people spend more than this on coffee every day. And if you're a product of this era, like I am, or someone who... Cool. Or someone who wants to know what this type of thing was like, then this is perfect for that. and it's not going to put you out very much to try it. And I mean, hell, you know, at some point this game's going to go on a Steam sale or something, and at some point it's probably going to, you know, you'll probably be able to get it for like 50 bloody cents or something if you really want to wait for that. Let's not do that yet, because what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you guys. Let's switch just to the 32 frames. Hopefully this won't screw up my capture, but let's see what happens. So let's go to number 2. Normal. I think this is a really neat piece, and I think this is a really, frankly... Okay, so this is 32 frames a second. So as you can see, definitely a lot smoother. If you're a person who is more used to the way modern games play, you'll probably find this a lot easier. It doesn't actually impact anything in terms of the player movement or anything like that. The mechanics are still the same. I mean, it does affect the movement in the sense that things are a lot smoother, so it may alter your visual perception, but it doesn't alter the gameplay. Like, your character doesn't move any differently. Everything is smoother, but the core systems are all the same. So you're not going to have a fundamentally different systemic experience playing in 32 frames as opposed to 16. I kind of think this looks a little weird only because, well, as the menu said, this is less authentic. But again, it shows the smarts of the guys who made this product, because it shows that they knew what they were making, and they were like, yeah, if we want some more modern players to play this and not immediately be put off by what would be considered in a modern game to be an unacceptably terrible frame rate, let's give them 32 and give them the means to do stuff that way. And I think that's really, really awesome. So you can have it either way. You want your authentic experience, you can get it. You want something a little more streamlined and easy to get into if you're a modern gamer, you got that too. I think that's really, really cool. So, yeah. I think this is pretty neat. I mean, there is some variety. As you can see, I complained about the magenta and green, but as you can see, there is variation in both the level design, the environments, the sprites, the color palette, etc. There is a neat weapon system. You've seen here that I've been picking up different weapons as I've gone. The only thing that I guess kind of would have been nice is the ability to change your weapons out, so you could sort of play a little more tactically if you wanted. What the game does now, by default, is well, not even by default, it's your only option. The game automatically picks the best weapon for you, so you can see I'm using the MKV right now, but when I run out of that, it switches back to rapid, and then when I run out of that, it just goes back to my normal gun. So it's it kind of would have been neat if you had the ability to change that, but it doesn't detract from it very much, because it's really all the same type of guns and the same type of shots. It's just, do they fire quickly, do they fire in a spread, or do they fire in a semi-automatic fashion? That's kind of it. So nothing hyper complicated about it, really. And it's kind of cool. I don't know. I think this is a really neat nostalgic piece. I'll probably finish this. I mean, it probably takes like, you know, an hour or 2 hours maybe, depending on your difficulty. And but I mean, for $3, man, it's $3 friggin' bucks. I think it's really neat, and it seems solidly made. I mean, even in the nostalgic context they were clearly going for, this is a well-constructed game. It plays well. I instantly get flashbacks to stuff like the original Duke Nukem and to Commander Keen and stuff like that. These guys clearly know all those games front to back, and they have a lot of respect for them, because it really feels like that. You could easily have thought this was you know, some lost piece from Apogee Software or early Epic Games, or Epic Mega Games, I should say, or any one of those things. You could easily be forgiven for thinking that. And that these guys managed to pull it off in 2013 is pretty damn impressive, I have to say. So I would say it's definitely worth checking it out if you have any interest in this type of historical platformer. If this does look hyper primitive and really kind of junky to you, well, it may not be for you. But again, $3, and I guarantee you at some point in the not too distant future it will be $1.50 or less, so you really have nothing to lose. So if this is something you think might interest you even slightly, I'd give it a shot. Yeah, I'll complete it, and truth be told, probably won't really think of it again after that. But there's nothing inherently wrong with that, and that doesn't make it a bad game by any means. And I have absolutely nothing but respect for people who make a product knowing that it's going to appeal to a very small subset of people, and that it's not something that's going to generate a lot of sales or even necessarily a lot of praise in artistic circles. But they knew what they wanted to make, they knew who it was for, and they went for it. And you know what? Even if it's a bad game, and this is not, you got to give kudos for that. So yeah, that is Muri, developed and published by Remar Games and Ludosity. It is currently on Steam. I'm playing the Windows version. I'm not sure. This might be available for Mac or Linux as well. Wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, it's dirt cheap, and it is a love letter to a time gone by. But it's a time I remember fondly, so I think pretty fondly of this too. My name has been Parallax Abstraction. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.